Okay, Madam Clerk, will you do the honors?
Yes, ma'am, I will. Mayor Eloise Taylor.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bill Colombo.
Here.
Councilman Steve O'Neill.
Here.
Councilwoman Nancy Britton. Here. Councilman Terrence Rowe.
Here.
City Attorney Joseph Public. Please let the record show that the city attorney is absent this evening, and City Manager Tom O'Neill.
Here.
Mr. O'Neill, do you have any announcements this evening?
None at this time.
Okay. Any comments from the public? All right. Any comments from council before we start on the workshop?
Just a quickie.
Hmm?
Just a quickie.
Okay.
I don't know if you've all seen Sam Pebble. You know, they have this 9/11 memorial service that I actually help with them to put it together each year. And this year, they have a gentleman that is coming down as an honorary guest. And he is a gentleman who was hurt in the in the war. So his name is Corey Jacob Bremsberg. So he's gotten really high honors and whatnot. So it'll be interesting. And they've sent this out to all the dignitaries and whatnot. So this should be interesting this year. See how we do with this.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Then we'll move on to council business, which is our workshop for review and discussion of the proposed city budget for 2014-2015. Mr. O'Neill.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of City Council. This is our annual exercise in review of the budget document. It is a draft budget, subject to your review, your changes as you see fit. Just a few opening remarks, and then we can get into our operating budget. We have a PowerPoint presentation for you that's been distributed to all members of council. I have a few opening remarks, like I said. This is a document that we begin work on in March of every year. All of our administrative staff and all of our department heads are heavily involved in the preparation. The process is lengthy because we like to think we leave no stone unturned. We review every line item with every single department head, not once but a number of times. And so what you have in front of you is a product of that review and the work by the finance staff in putting together the budget document. Once again, a few remarks just as comments on the budget. In 2014-15, our declining CRA reserves and stagnant property values continue to impact the city and its budget. Although we do have some good news that we received from the property appraiser about a month and a half ago, and that is that estimated property values are not expected to decline as they had in the previous 7 years in the city, and actually are expected to increase marginally by 0.6% in 2014-15. The 2014-15 draft budget continues to reflect the city's strong financial condition. We do have a strong financial posture, and that meets all requirements of the state of Florida, and also it is a budget that has a balanced nature, and the expenditures balance with the expected revenues. However, we do have adjustments that were made this year that you're not used to seeing. And we have needed to make those adjustments based on our lower revenues and declining CRA reserves. And specifically, most of the reductions that you see are due directly to the declining revenues and reserves, and the funding for the CRA grant programs and discretionary projects is not included in the draft budget document at this time. With that comment, I do want to point out some other good news. As we move along, bear in mind that we put the budget together some 6 to 8 weeks ago in draft form, and we're basing our work based on our expectations at the time. as we move forward with the fiscal year, toward the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30, we get a better idea on exactly where we are and where we will be with regard to funding carryover. And specifically, this year, we are going to have more funding than we anticipated for fund carryover from the current year budget in the CRA fund. So you do have the opportunity to think about placing some money back into the line items where no funding occurs in the draft budget at this time. And also, in order to address our ongoing situation, we may want to consider new revenue sources and user fees where you deem it appropriate. And with that, I'll begin our PowerPoint presentation. And please stop me at any time. This is your budget, your process, and I want to make sure that you feel that you can ask any questions. The staff is here to be available to respond to any questions that you may have. And remember, as we go through this, that this is your budget. As I mentioned, it is a plan, and it is not cast in stone. It's subject to your review and change. Okay, our first slide is, give me just a moment to have my eyes adjust to the dark. Okay, our first slide is 2014-2015 proposed budget. And as we state in this slide, it is a financial proposal that directs the provision of our public funds, and it's based on an estimate, once again, of revenues and expenditures. It serves as your policy document, your financial plan, your operations guide, and a vehicle to communicate with the public that we serve. Our budget, on to the next slide, is balanced. Our budget is balanced on a proposed millage rate of 5.43448, and that is the adjusted rollback rate. Our net total of all funds is $10,730,000, $242. That represents a 7.84% overall decrease from the previous year. And as you can see, the decrease is a function of anticipated reductions in red light camera revenue, decreases in funding for CRA grants and discretionary projects, and the decline of undesignated reserves in the CRA fund. Once again, this is not gloom and doom. This is a budget that balances our needs with regard to services. All services are maintained, but it's reflective of our financial posture and our ability to fund certain areas and projects. The next slide, the totals by fund. Our general fund totals $5,022,836. General fund, once again, is Public Works, Parks, Police and Fire, and a portion of all of our administrative functions. The Community Redevelopment Fund total is $1,135,559, and our Utility Fund is $3,983,200, and we'll go over them in some detail in just a few minutes as we proceed. Penny for Pasco budget is $441,150, and as you may recall, our Penny for Pasco funds public safety equipment, police, fire apparatus, police body armor, firefighter bunker gear. It also funds park expenditures, capital expenditures. It cannot fund operating expenses by virtue of how it is funded. Our stormwater utility fund total is $147,497, and that's based on an ERU, which is an equivalent residential unit. The current stormwater utility fee goes out with the water bills, and it's based on a fee of $3 per month per ERU for all residential and all commercial properties in the city. Our next slide has a pie chart, and I won't go over this in detail. It's there for your reference as you need it. It shows all of the funds for the entire budget and their percentage of the overall fund. With regard to the general fund, as we mentioned, it's $5,022,836, and that represents a decrease, and the decrease from the current year. It's typically reflective of our lower anticipated revenues and red light camera revenues. It's limited discretionary spending where we can do that, and we think we still can maintain services. We do include in every budget a contingency fund line item that's both for unanticipated expenditures and other items as you see fit. For example, one is employee raises. There is an allocation in there where it would allow you to grant a raise as you deem appropriate. Our next slide is once again a pie chart that shows all the various components of the general fund broken down into percentage of the overall amount. Our CRA, Community Redevelopment Trust Fund, it totals some $1,135,559. Our previous year was $1,910,759. This is obviously a significant reduction, and it's reflective of our declining reserves. And you need to know that we use the reserves in their entirety when we put together the draft budget, but as I mentioned a few moments ago, we're spending less money than what we had anticipated, and so we will have a larger fund carryover balance than we thought we would when we put the draft budget together. That can be used at your discretion. We do have, once again, an allocation for contingencies in the CRA. It is a minor amount, and it can be used to fund either projects or employee expenses as you deem appropriate. We have another pie chart that reflects the various component allocations for the CRA fund and the overall expense fund. Penny for Pasco sums to $441,150, and that consists both of our new revenues and a fund balance carryover. It represents a slight decrease from last year, and it includes in it funding for a new police boat, a new needs assessment for a fire station and public works facility. Those have been expenses that have been in the prior year budget, but we've carried them over to be able to be expended as you see fit next year. And also continued use of the Penny for Pasco Fund for public safety. We have new police vehicles, police interceptor vehicles, body armor, fire department, building improvements, bunker gear, and miscellaneous equipment, and replacement vehicles for utility and public works vehicles that are beyond their serviceable life. We do have a pie chart that explains the various components of the Penny for Pasco expenses. That it's up on the board at this time, and you can refer to that anytime that you want. Our next area is our utility fund. This sums to some $3,983,200. That represents an increase from the prior year. And we do have in our operating budget additional funding from the prior year for purchased bulk water, although I do want to mention that we are purchasing considerably less than what we anticipated, and we base load our system with the well field that was installed in 2006, and the older wells, we base load our system and buy what we need that cannot be produced from city wells, and that is less than what we anticipated, so I want you to know that. We also, in contingency in the utility fund, we include an amount for emergencies, other items such as raises that are subject to your approval. And we do have the pie chart that represents on it all of the various components of the utility fund broken down into percentages that are budgeted. The next fund that we have is our stormwater utility, and this is an important fund and one that you may decide to focus in on as we move forward during the next year. The stormwater utility is a fund that is commonplace in the state of Florida. There are some 400 plus stormwater utilities now in the state. It's a fee structure that's based on a user fee for the stormwater system that the city must maintain in accordance with its National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. We are required to operate this system, do routine maintenance, and this stormwater utility fund pays for that. There are other things that in the future the city of Port Richey may decide to do. Stormwater is essentially, in most instances in the city of Port Richey, it is conveyed to the river and Miller's Bayou and some of the adjacent canals without much in the way of stormwater treatment. It is a component of the pollution that exists out in the surface waters of the river and in other areas of the city. And a lot of municipalities, through their stormwater utility, have installed additional conveyances or treatment devices that clean up the stormwater. It has a way of being very polluted depending upon how rainfall occurs and how the discharges occur to the surface waters. It contains heavy metals, greases, oils, fertilizers, and so forth, and it is something that you may want to consider proceeding with improvements to the system on to help keep the river clean and the surface waters of the river and other areas, particularly Miller's Bayou, that have suffered from decades of stormwater drainage outfall into those areas. Once again, we do have funding for our vac truck included in the stormwater utility and labor and materials for stormwater system maintenance and minor projects that we do in-house. It does have a contingency line item in there to be used as you see fit. And the pie chart is enclosed and on the board, the wall, excuse me, and it shows the components of the existing stormwater utility fund. We have also, as the next item, our capital improvement plan, and for construction activity and equipment acquisition, it sums to $1,217,000 this year, and it's in the budget on pages 107 to 114, and we'll also see it as part of this presentation. The next slide, we have our challenges that as we saw as a staff to be included in this, and as you're aware, we're dealing with balancing a budget with stagnant property tax revenues and increasing expenditures. Like any other business or service-oriented organization, we face increasing expenditures. In some cases, they're not as much as we anticipate and not as much as what we think when we're planning a budget. A perfect example is fuel. 2 years ago, we planned for $5 a gallon gasoline, and I think today it was $3.09 at Wawa. And so that's a good part of the news that we receive from time to time. So we don't spend money on things like that we think we're going to, and that money results in a fund carryover that we have occasionally. We do have the 0.6% increase in the overall property values that I mentioned earlier, and like we have done in the past, I believe it's important that we continue to invest in community redevelopment. As we all know, we can't, as an agency in a declining economy, not declining, but a stagnant economy, build a lot of glitzy projects, but we can do things that we have done. We can work on redevelopment by demolition of structures, our road paving projects and our redevelopment activities, although funded by the utility, in the water utility budget by putting in new mains where they're appropriate. We need to discuss at one point new sources of revenue. I'm recommending to you that you discuss changes in your existing user fees, and those are directly attributable to the way that people use the facilities and based on a fair and equitable user fee rate. And I recommend that we talk about that, not necessarily tonight, but next year and after the beginning of the first of the year. I mentioned in this the stormwater utility fee and user impact fees. We may need to take a look at those both in their entirety. I will stop, and we have more in the budget for individual departments, but I wanted to pause and make sure that I gave you an adequate opportunity to ask any questions. And Pat, could you turn the lights on? And so I'll stop and we'll respond to any questions that you may have.
Questions so far?
So far.
Nothing from me.
I've got a couple. You project a decrease in the revenues from the red light cameras. I know we've had a compromised situation this past year, but we expect everything to be back online by the end of the year. Why do you still anticipate that there's going to be a decrease in revenues?
They've been declining, and I think a change in driver behavior.
Okay.
People are aware that they're there, and so the driver behavior is something that over time changes with the red light camera program. And it is conservative. You know, we can estimate a number. I think it's in the best interest of the city to be conservative. If we issue more
Add back into the budget.
in terms of dollars,
Yes.
it may be as much as, I'd say, being conservative once again, $150,000.
Okay.
And like I mentioned, you can look to allocate those in items that where the funding has been eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else? All right.
We're probably going to continue, so I was just saving a couple things that I have.
I think when you, before I start, I think that when you review the budget, you'll see within the budget, except for the areas where we have reduced the funding, that it remains pretty much the same. There are no requests for new personnel, and it remains pretty much the same as the current year. So with that, I'll begin the department reviews and statements of what are here. Does anybody need to have the lights off?
No, I just soon do it this way.
It helps me with my old eyes if the lights are on. We can start with the administration department. As I'm sure you're probably aware, it consists of the city manager and other positions, city clerk, assistant city manager, our deputy city clerk, who works most of the time at this time during the at the Public Works Department, and the administrative assistant that works in the city manager's office. Our personnel expenditures are $292,257. That includes both general fund, CRA, and utility fund. The administration department, as well as some of the other departments, is funded by a variety of different revenue sources as listed. It's not just a general fund expense, nor is it just a CRA or a utility fund, but they all contribute because we work on those various areas as needed. The operating expenditures are minimal in the admin department and listed at $9,000 plus. The next department is finance and human resources. Our finance director position also is in charge of HR. We have 3 full-time positions in that department, and it consists of the director, the finance manager, and an HR specialist. It also oversees utility billing and collections. As you may recall, we reorganized that some 2.5 years ago and put this under the finance department. People that deal with money and expenditures, collections, and disbursements, in my opinion, are best served by being under the finance director and in that department. We have labor and benefit expenditures of $189,708, and once again, they're funded from 3 sources, as well as the operating expenditures of the department that are $28,635. We have our IT department listed next. It's a very, very important function of the city that works constantly in all areas of the city. Not only do they take care of office computers, but they take care of building security and a variety of different functions. A year and a half ago, they were heavily involved with a complete development of the software for police dispatch. That was all done in-house and saved a considerable sum of money, and they continue to do that in all areas of the city. Their labor and benefit costs, which include salaries and all benefits that are paid, are a function of general fund and CRA expenditures, and the operating expenditures are also funded from general fund, CRA, and utilities, because they do serve the utility function as well. The next slide that we have is the police department. We show you a couple of pictures in there. One is the newest cruiser that we have, and we have personnel information listed at 17 full-time positions, which includes all of the sworn officers, 3 budgeted part-time positions, 4 full-time dispatchers, and a budgeted part-time dispatcher. Our personnel expenditures in the police department are funded by both general fund and CRA. The community policing that is done by the police department is considered to be an eligible expenditure of the CRA, and that's listed accordingly. Our operating expenses, which exclude things like the cost of the cruisers and so forth, and other listed at $120,392, and once again funded by general fund and CRA. We have one of the newest pieces of equipment depicted in the picture that's shown, and it's the extrication equipment that was purchased and approved by the council during the previous year. I didn't know what that was when I first looked at it either, so we decided to put a subtitle on.
You can click it ahead so that you're on the wrong page.
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'll pause for a moment. Is that, Chief, is that carried on a truck?
Every day.
Okay, okay. Which engine is that on?
Engine 42.
Okay,
That's our first run engine.
okay. But we wanted to show you in the picture what was purchased, and that was in front of the council some time back. Moving on to our development services department. We have 3 full-time and 1 part-time position. The personnel include our building official, who serves as the department head, and a full-time and a part-time administrative assistant, and 1 full-time code compliance officer. Our labor and benefit costs are $205,316. It is funded by general fund and CRA expenditures, and again, our development services activities, which include code enforcement and building, activities and inspection activities are considered to be an eligible CRA expenditure, and they do have operating expenditures in the budget listed at $39,600. The picture that you see on the slide is the new Asian fusion restaurant that's right in back of the Wawa, which is an out parcel of the Walmart property. And that's under construction at this time. The next slide is our Public Works, Utilities, and Stormwater Department. We have 5 full-time positions in Public Works and Parks Maintenance, 11 full-time in Utilities. And bear in mind, as we've moved along with various utility discussions and activities, about 1/2 of the Port Richey water and sewer utility lies outside the city limits. And so occasionally you will see Port Richey trucks north of the city limits in Senate Manor and other areas in Westport. The city of Port Richey maintains all the water distribution system in Westport. The sewer is maintained by the county. So you will see the trucks and activities outside the city. Personnel expenditures are listed at $906,051, and our operating expenditures are listed at $2,479,208. That includes all of the expenses from the water and sewer collection, both our purchased bulk water and our wastewater service that's provided in bulk by Pasco County. One thing I do want to mention, this year we were able to take all of our utility expenditures out of the CRA to provide progress in regard to the CRA, and ultimately, you know, our goal, I believe, as a city should be to remove all of our operating expenditures to the greatest extent possible out of the CRA and reserve those dollars for redevelopment projects where we can. You know, in full recognition of the fact that you know, we fund activities now and we can't get there overnight, nor can we get there in one budget year. The pictures that we have shown here are one from the last road paving project and a stormwater project that was done off Weber Drive. That's an area where the Public Works crews installed a pipeline and a conveyance to the river to handle a stormwater flooding project off of that street that was causing a problem. In our capital program, I'll go over this briefly. You know, we have eliminated some capital. We have ongoing expenses that are funded and are necessary to be funded. None of these are cast in stone, and they all will require your approval at a future date and time when we bring it back to you for review and consideration. We have ongoing expenses for the 2008 pumper truck listed at $32,000. We have a needs assessment listed again. We have spent no money in previous years on that, but it is a matter that needs to be addressed. The fire station facility is one that needs replacement, in my opinion, or a dramatic overhaul. It has been used for a variety of different functions in the past, and it's not suitable for use in a modern fire department, and it needs to be addressed ultimately. We have bunker gear shown in the fire department, and that concludes next year's expenses. What you see in the out years of the capital plan are expenses that are forecasted, and funding has not been set aside for that. Those are out year expenses in an effort to try and plan ahead. So as you review that, if you have any questions on any of these, please feel free to give me a call. Moving on, we have the police department, a CIP shown. We're showing funding for 2 vehicles. It says 1, but that's a typographical error. And we have body armor in there and some office furniture shown, and funding for a new police boat that will come from the Penny for Pasco. The existing boat that we have is older and well beyond its serviceable life, and it's, in my opinion, too small to serve the needs of the city. I think that all of us know and believe that one of our important functions with the police department is patrol of the river. We constantly hear that people enjoy seeing the police boat out there and on duty, and there's a big, wide stretch of the river that needs to be patrolled. And I indeed was out on Sunday, and there's a lot of people that use the river in the city of Port Richey, and patrol of that river section is essential. Moving on to the Public Works Department, we have shown renewal and replacement funding, which is an account where we set aside money to where we don't have to buy expensive pieces of equipment and pay for them all in one single year and take that budget hit. So we save up money that is commonly done in municipal operations, and we're showing a lease payment for the backhoe, additional R&R with the hopes that we can buy the next backhoe outright as opposed to a future leasing arrangement. Buying the equipment outright is always the best way to proceed. The leasing arrangement works when you can't swing the purchase all in 1 year, but you definitely over the long term spend more money on a leasing arrangement. We show 2 mowers in the budget for consideration. All of these that you see, once again, in the first year are fully funded. The out years will be funded as you deem appropriate next year and the following years. We've got hydraulic personnel lift equipment shown here, which is for safety purposes, access to manholes and other confined space areas, and those pieces of equipment are shown. We also are showing our planned street improvement project, and this year the funding for that project is taken from a city transportation impact fee account and not from the general fund nor from the CRA budget. We're not showing any parks projects at this time. As we move forward with your discussions on reallocation of some of the dollars that are fund carryover, you may wish to include some funding in these areas here so that we can have the ability to do projects without a budget amendment. The water distribution CIP is shown next. We are showing the funding from about 3 months ago. We hired the services of Signature Construction to do ditch cleaning, which is something that needs to be done routinely. And you saw on Bay Boulevard, I sent out some pictures of their mini excavator in working condition out there in the field. That excavator, when purchased, and this again would come back to you for purchase whenever it might be bid. That would be used both in water and sewer utilities. We have some pretty tight spaces where we can't get a backhoe in, and we need power equipment in there, and also in stormwater and ditch cleaning and so forth. The next slide. Excuse me. I'm looking for the, okay, I'm on the utilities department. CIP once again. This is for the water plant, and we have new green sand purchase planned for next year. That's an essential component of the water plant operation. The green sand effectively filters out the iron precipitate that's treated for in the Port Richey drinking water, and it has a lifespan and will require replacement in the next year. Let me make sure I'm on the right slide. There I am. Yeah, okay. We have well rehabilitations on there, and what that money is set aside for is submersible well pump replacement when it's required. Our next slide is sewer collection. And I'm having a little difficulty reading what's on the wall, but I think that's sewer collection. Is that right, Chief? Okay. Okay. We've set aside money in R&R for a crane truck, which is used consistently on a daily basis. The city has one now. We're planning for replacement of that truck. That's used on a daily basis whenever we have a pump replacement in a sanitary sewer lift station, and is an essential piece of equipment that the city must have for maintenance of its sewer collection sanitary lift stations. We have listed the funding carryover from this year's budget for the Queener lift station. We're not going to be able to complete that by the end of the year. The contractor now is currently planning to schedule that work in October, and he has till the end of the year to complete it under the contract terms. So you saw that matter on your previous agenda for the CDBG contract extension improvement. Next item we have is manhole rehabilitation. The manholes in the Port Ritchie system are relatively new, but occasionally they will require relining, and this considers that expenditure. And we have gravity line rehabilitation. This past year, I think you will recall that we did a stormwater relining job over off Grand Boulevard. And this gravity line rehabilitation in most instances would be a gravity line where you pull a liner through. And whenever we do that kind of work, we essentially put that line back in a like new condition, and the service life is extended another 40 to 50 years on it. So with that, that concludes the presentation. You know, your comments, questions would certainly be welcome. Direction on where you think we ought to go with regard to reallocating funding, what your priorities may be, and I will pause and everybody will be available for questions.
Questions from council?
Tom?
Yeah.
The green sand, you've got $60,000 to start, and then it drops down to 30 to 15. How is that playing out?
Let me refer to that again.
It's on the utilities
Yes.
department budget.
The first year is for total replacement of one of the filters. There are two. And the next year is maintenance, and the out years are R&R money, to where we would save to replace the next filter.
And the well rehabs at 10,000, what are you planning on doing there?
That's money that's set aside for replacement of a pump when it may become necessary. All of the pumps that are in service at this time are submersible pumps, and if one of them fails, that's where we would fund it from.
Steve?
Well, first I'll say thank you to the staff for a good job again. I know this is a lot of work. Just a couple of things. We noted from the very beginning the almost 8% decrease from the current year budget. That was reflected initially in regards to CRA. I do recall that restatement of the CRA. That was 2009, is that right?
That's correct.
That's what's known, okay. How time flies. Certainly you mentioned with a priority, well, certainly a priority is the new sources of general fund revenue. We talked about it some time ago, years ago as a matter of fact. We, I believe, had a workshop where we actually paid someone to come in and work with us. I don't think a whole lot's happened from that time forward. So I think that should be a priority, and I'm glad you noted some of those sources. I won't go over them. You noted them in here. They've been noted before in a meeting. Certainly in meetings to come, we've got to get going with that. That should be right out of the gate. There is a note in here, interestingly enough, that the 5.43 mills rate represents a modest increase of $16K in the ad valorem tax revenue. The 6.43 obviously would represent more. When we consider, as it's outlined here in this budget and has been for some time, the expenditures associated, you see them in here, you know what they total, they're close to $800,000. We've got to start weaning ourselves off of that. And I guess my broader question would even be, is there any threat that the CRA, come to a close at some point when we look at years ahead? I would just encourage the council that indeed, if that's the case, and there's perhaps a 7-year window, I don't know that for a fact, but if there is, and we continue to have these high expenditures, I just wonder when the rest of you will come to the plate and look to increase these taxes, which is where they probably are going to have to be. I know nobody wants to raise taxes, but you can't keep the $800,000 in the CRA. That just isn't doing things properly. The paint fix-up, is that something that's going to be offered as well for the next year? No. Okay, we
Funding has
eliminated
been
that.
deleted for that
Okay, that's what I thought. Just wanted to make sure.
generator.
Okay, all right. I know there was some.
And it's being maintained professionally at this point, and I think it could be reasonably expected to last quite a while after that time period.
I mean, as noted with the traffic light numbers, we knew this a long time ago. There are other places, I guess, that are looking to omit. I believe places like St. Petersburg. I'm not saying we would do that here, but we certainly noted, even when it started, that there was going to be a decrease over time, and that just makes sense. But again, I'll just come back to as we look at each section. And it's critical. We'll have some choices to make. I guess one highlight was the fact that there was that 0.6 projected increase in from the appraisers, and I think we've noted before that we would see that going up. I guess along the waterfront, it's maybe a little bit slower, but nonetheless, a reference was made to that here as well. But anyway, just a couple of things that I'd picked up, and I'll wait to hear others.
Well, let's all remember that 10% is the maximum. And if this city's going to continue to go on, we have many, 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 many more years to go before, we're going to keep on raising taxes till we hit the 10, and then where do we go, Mr. O'Neill? I think what we need to do is just keep on doing what we've done in the past, looking for ways to get smarter, spend money differently. Look, I know a lot of people out here haven't gotten raises. The economy's not gotten any better. I just think that it's just a sorry state of affairs. And I just don't think it's the appropriate time to go up. I understand the whole CRA. And matter of fact, the CRA, we get funded by the CRA until 2024, correct? So that's the cutoff date. So that's 10 years away. So that's kind of scary. So yeah, we got to find ways to bring in revenue, but not necessarily through taxes. We might want to get be a little smarter than that. I think we've all done a really good job over the years of really being penny wise. I mean, we were in a state of emergency when a lot of us came here, so I think we've done a great job. And not necessarily sure it's jack up those prices. As it is to really putting your hat on and thinking caps on and saying, okay, we've done this in the past. Now where else can we cut back? What else can we do? There's got to be other ways to get ahead here, because we'll roll back rate within 8 years. We'll be at 10, or 10 years. We'll be in the 10 years. We'll be up there.
Could I respond? Because I feel like I was probably pointed out and asking a question. Your point is well taken, but if you look at the marginal increases in the Florida State Retirement System, the general liability, the property insurance increases, fleet fuel increases in the health insurance, again, and the increases in the utility. I think one of the meetings here, I think you saw folks coming in where, they're throwing out 100, 200, 300, 400% increases at us in an area that we basically, needed to move forward there. And now, I agree you want to move cautiously in moving forward, but, our sister city's at 9.57. Again, when Dale wanted us to come down to 3.9, maybe, Britain assumes that we're going to go down, but, eventually I think, it's going to come up. How long can you stay at this 5 something rate and continue to have these increases? Pretty soon you're going to be around the corner and have that 10 years, and all of a sudden you're going to have to do just what you did with the water, with having such an increase, and we had to place PACT here. So.
Well, I might want to point out too, it's my opinion that going down to 3.9 was a mistake in the first place, and it put us in a position that we've been slowly working our way out of without trying to do any large tax increases. And we've been steadily doing that to where right now our current millage rate is not all that different than it was before it dropped down to 3.9, which of course was before the real estate crash and there was money coming in. I also might want to point out too, as we go year by year, and we get those worksheets from the state to tell us, okay, this is your rollback rate. You can do this, so you can do X amount with a majority vote, and X amount with a 60% vote, or however they do it, and X amount with a unanimous vote. Those amounts are determined by the previous year. So if you do nothing this year, it comes back at the same numbers next year. In other words, we miss an opportunity to tack a little extra on. So, I'm open to giving some thought to some increase. I'm not open to, let's just throw the flood doors open. But again, what's our how much we make per mill? Roundabout $250,000, 225, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that, So I mean, those are just the figures to keep in your head as to what a mill brings to this city, as opposed to what a mill brings to Newport Richey or any other city. It's even a full mill. If we were to do a full mill, it's not a windfall, but it certainly is it's a burden on the people out there. So it's that balancing act that we have to do. So.
Yeah, well, it would be a different story if, we just didn't sit back and watch people, in their dream home on the water, pack their bags and move out because they couldn't afford to live there. So, that being said,
Well, I mean,
and we have a lot to talk about.
we have a lot to talk about, and again, the thing that kind of gets lost in a lot of discussions, and you hear this about, okay, property values countywide have gone up 1.5% or something like that. In our city, I believe the property values that have gone up have been the higher end property values. That has not been the lower end property values. I believe that was brought up by somebody, I don't know who. It might have even been in a newspaper article, but the bottom line is that if you take a lot of higher end properties and the majority of the increase of taxable value is there, these homes are homesteaded. These homes have, they've got protection. So the problem with a property crash is you can never see the funds from a city standpoint go up as quick as they went down. They can go down in a flash, and they can go down a lot. But they can only go up just so fast with Amendment 1 and homestead protection, which is a good thing for a lot of people. But again, it's hard to say. We had houses that were, you know, appraised well over $1 million, and they may still be actual value, but they're not taxable value anymore. You know, they're still just kind of creeping up.
Right.
It's a long road.
All right.
Well, you know, then too, just to add that if you really look, and it was nice we had the summary in the back, you know, if you just take, let's say, police and fire, okay, and you're looking at the value per citizen of what those represent. I mean, let's not pretend there's never been talk about the two highest cost areas in this city. There has. I think for most of us that are up here, if not all of us that are up here, these are two services that have to continue. And there is a cost for those services, and those services keep increasing in cost. If you start to add some of the other elements of redevelopment, other things that occur in our waterfront area, et cetera, those equal numbers as well. And that's why I say I would agree with Bill, although I would probably be a little bit more on the increase because we haven't had it. That's not to say that there's going to be a steady increase all the time. But if we can't also identify new sources of revenue, which we have a few outlined to us now, I don't know what those are going to equate to. We can't pretend to hold that rate steady.
Real quick.
Nancy?
The property, well, you know, we do have a lot of vacant properties, you know, like the PUD that's over there on Washington Street that hasn't been developed. And, you know, is it possible, as a small city, is it possible for us to maybe try and find a way to lure people in? I mean, we could talk about that in the future, where we could do some kind of program where if somebody comes in and purchases, you know, New York's doing it, they're cutting taxes for people coming in and developing and whatnot. So, you know, just I'm going to throw that out there as an idea. What can we do to entice people to come into our small city, to bring their business, to bring their developments, to bring their you know, single-family homes and whatnot, and develop the area a little bit more than what we have?
Okay, anyone from the audience wish to speak to the budget or the issues?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Tonkin of Sunset Landing Marina, 5115 Sunset Boulevard in Port Richey. Just taking off the note of what Ms. Britton just talked about. There are a lot of other ways for the city to gain more revenue by including companies to come into the city. Of course, you've heard of the Pasco County Economic Development Council, and they have ideas too, but it's to the point where it's larger corporations and they need like more space. For instance, if you were a hoteler and you wanted to make a hotel here, you'd have to have like the promise of like 98 new employees and everything like that, and you'd have to say like how large you were going to build it and everything, so to speak. So if you were, as a city, to go and do something similar, you could say that you know, you have a parcel this large, or a parcel, maybe even something that the city owns, that you could sell to a corporation that wanted to come in. But really what we've been focusing on lately, as far as my company, and of course, you know, Walter and Gildog, we've been trying to focus on the tourism aspect of things. And I've mentioned to a couple of you that are sitting on the panel tonight, and I've mentioned a couple good ideas, like about anchor fields, where you could have boats that are out in the Gulf in our area, that we could have an anchor field out there that people would come in and they would utilize our river, but they would keep their boat out in the Gulf, like by Durney Key or whatever. And it's just one scenario that would bring more revenue to the city with using the businesses that are already here, hotels, restaurants, So that would bring up the tax base. But let me just go on to say what I wanted to say tonight. And this is in regard to some exciting news that we've been doing. We have a business association now. It's the Bayou Business Association. It's the waterfront companies that are working along the bayou and the river in Port Richey. And we've all come together, and the very first thing that we've done is we polled some of the residents and to see, you know, what their feeling was about the dredging. They're still interested in dredging. Some of them still want to do a tax assessment to, like, you know, help with the dredging and everything like that. They wouldn't mind that. They wanted
Go ahead.
some of the residents are interested in golf cart accessibility, so, and some of them are wondering if they can cross US 19 bridge with a golf cart. Secondly, the Business Association is planning to put a marquee sign up on US 19 so that people, locals and tourists alike, can discern where the Bayou Business Waterfront is. So obviously, all the local businesses will be on that marquee sign. And collectively, we're doing a website that's going to also entail the new West Pasco Harbors development plan. So we're working with companies not only within Port Richey, but New Port Richey, anything that has to do with the waterfront. Of course, you know, Windsong and any of the waterfront restaurants and hotels and everything up and down from New Port Richey and Port Richey together. We're all doing something like that. We're going to have an ongoing calendar. So we're going to do it seasonally, and on the website it will project the calendar. It will include things in New Port Richey, things in Port Richey, things of even political nature, not just fun things. You know, we're going to include everything in there. And lastly, the city's Waterfront Business Association is going to plan a monster Halloween bash on the bayou for Halloween, and dragon boat races in December to kind of choreograph with the boat parade for Christmas time. And then as the season progresses, more things will be added to that. And we just wanted to let you know that the waterfront companies and businesses are all committed to the community. And we, as business owners, are always creating jobs. We are creating growth, and we want tourism in our community. And we think that's the main focus of how we're going to all, like, have a better, sustainable life for our citizens, because as soon as we do, you know, these small tasks, you'll see that there will be a better quality of life. People will have more jobs. There'll be less, you know, of the, you know, unfortunate scenarios that you see people just walking around doing nothing in our city and kind of actually making other people say, is this a safe place to live, and all that kind of thing that I know you know what I'm talking about. I'm not even going to go there, you know. So anyway, I just want to remind you that the CRA meeting, the special meeting that Walter did a presentation on and everything, so remember the things that we're interested in, and hopefully you can include it in your budget, which is like fixing the sidewalks in the perimeter areas around the waterfront, the entrance to the waterfront area, which is like the Old Post Road, Grand Boulevard, and around that area. Hopefully we'll fix those volatile sections of the broken pathways and stuff. Add lighting and signage, wayward signage, like lamp posts, like really cute ones with like wayward signage that said this is where this company is, this is where this company is, and perhaps like talk to the DOT or something about treadway and maybe making it a one-way loop around or something like that, so that people don't get so confused on how to like drive and park. And that's pretty much it. And also, the city doesn't always have to spend so much money on, for instance, you know, getting consultants and things of that nature, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of creative minds in our community, and they've been in business for a long time, and they're willing to also go out on a limb and just help the city for free and all that kind of thing. I mean, we have a lot of smart people that live in our community, for real. So you don't always have to just pay people to do things that are necessary, like cleaning out ditches and stuff like that. I understand. But there are actually people that are bored and they would actually like to clean out ditches. And amazingly, you would be surprised at how many people do, because obviously look at adopt a road. I mean, people adopt a road all the time, adopt a ditch, you know, whatever. And
Your time
That's
is
pretty
up.
much it.
If you, yeah, wind
thank you
up for us.
thank you
We-
for my double
Okay.
time.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Walter?
Thank you. Walter Lowe's with Gildong, 5419 Treadway. So, as Kristen alluded to, I mean, I was before the council and the CRA a couple months back, and we talked about a number of important, I think, development initiatives. I'm not really sure if the current budget that's outlined here is reflective of that. So, Nancy, when you talk about, Ms. Britt, when you talk about investment and finding and attracting new investment dollars coming into it, I'm not sure if the current budget really reflects that attraction. You know, we talked about, I think, some simple things that we can invest in, like I think that you'd find in most communities: sidewalks, landscaping, street landscaping, things that I think are palatable, that we can invest in, that we should invest in, and then I think we were all in agreement last time we talked that we should invest in. You know, we've been trying to gather, and I think we've been successful. There's been a number of success or very exciting announcements in regards to some of the county commitment to our area. That I think, you know, if we could show the same sort of level of commitment from the city's side of things, that I think it would go a long way. You know, with the announcement that the Harbors Initiative have designated the harbors as one of the 3 main focus areas. I mean, here's the opportunity that we've been looking for. All we have to do is show the same commitment back to this to say, you know what is our role from the business community? What is the city's role in this? And what is the county's role? I mean, here's the opportunity that we've been waiting for to show what this area can be. I mean, it's sitting right in front of us. So to be sitting there, you know, I don't see any dollars designated to development efforts, to redevelopment efforts, whatever you want to call it. I mean, so I gotta ask, are we serious about what we want to do here in our community? You know, I mean, sidewalks. I mean, I don't see it. You know, street landscaping. Once again, I don't see it. You know, these are simple things. I mean, this is what our communities are based off of, and we can't afford to find a way to do sidewalks. We can't afford a way to do lightscaping. So you know what? You feel safe if you walk down to our commercial district. We form a real commercial district. We look at, you know, a commercial district to us being a waterfront community is to really talk about dredging. I mean, let's be serious. You know, we brought it to you guys saying we'll pay for half the commercial dredging for the district as a business community. You know, so to not see any of that reflective in our current outlined budget, I don't know. I mean, that's disappointing. I mean, and so I put it back to the council because, I mean, you guys have always, up to this point, been a great community partner, and we hope that continues. But we really hope that our current future thought coming in through the budget would be reflective of that. I mean, if we want to be a progressive community, I mean, I know given our budget state that we can't do everything at once, but I think we can do something. We can inch forward. We can, you know, like I said, even doing signage and stuff along those lines. I mean, I think we can find a way to do that. I hope we can find a way to do that. Like I said, I think, as Kristen alludes, I mean, many of the businesses around the waterfront district anyways, and we hope that expands. We invite businesses every day to join those efforts, but they can come and be a part of that and be a part of partnering with the city with our development efforts. So I hopefully we can further that thought. Thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
I have a couple of questions, if we can
Yeah.
follow with that. There was reference to a website. Is there a website now, or you mentioned that's being worked? Okay. And in going back to the gentleman's questions as far as street improvements, sidewalks, et cetera, I'll direct this to Tom, but I'll first ask, we I think we're all familiar with what was done on 19 and the problems that we had. We actually had a woman here some years ago that actually was part of doing SeaWorld. If there was anybody qualified to change the area on 19 right there, this person was it. That didn't work out so well. I think we all were witness to see what actually happened there. And I believe that was grant money as well. But in going back, in talking about the CRA dollars, we'd always made mention of investing in sidewalks, landscaping, et cetera. Now, I think with this current DOT, that's put somewhat of a dent in that, and there was some hold on some things. But I'll direct this back to Tom. I certainly don't feel that the commitment is zero at this point. I wouldn't agree with that. Do you want to comment?
Sure. There's a couple of initiatives that we've undertaken. One of them is we put together a very comprehensive proposal to the Restore Act committee that Kristen sits on. Walter indeed was in the audience when we presented our proposal that included a request to fund a considerable amount of improvements in the waterfront district. We've previously included dollars that were allocated for sidewalks and other improvements. What I'm suggesting you may want to do, bear in mind, when we put this budget together, we were forecasting that we had no excess revenue that would result in any fund carryover. We were conservatively looking at the budget. We now think we're going to have some money. I would suggest that you may want to direct me and Pam to put together some recommendations to refund, if you will, some of the initiatives. For example, the cooperative dredging project, the sidewalk extension that we talked about. I've met several times with Mr. Soyanen and Walter. Their attorneys are drawing up a agreement at this time to give us access to tie into the sidewalk and extend down in public right-of-way down Old Post Road. So you may want to direct me to do that. I would recommend that you do, and I bring those back to you at a future date.
I thought we were already online with doing it. I thought we were going to do that ourselves.
Well, we are, but bear in mind, that's what I planned, but bear in mind, we now have the budget, and the money that I intended to hopefully draw from, we weren't able to fund when we put the budget together. Now I believe we can do that because we know we're going to have some fund carryover that we didn't anticipate.
Okay.
This CRA contribution for this year is how much less?
I'll have to get back to you tomorrow. I don't have that right in front of me. Do
Are you
Tom, in order
referring to the budget itself?
Possibly.
It's about $800,000. The
Right.
budget's about $800,000 less in the CRA than it was in the current year.
Right, okay.
I think it's important to focus on the fact that our budget is a decrease from the prior year. Because there are so many priorities and needs that to have a decrease and not be able to move forward in some of the projects that we started on and we focused on and we want to do is not a good omen for our ability to, as you've indicated, to attract people to the area. And I think, and I agree with both of you, that the extent to which this Port Richey becomes a distinctive attraction for the community is the extent to which people want to live here, build here, develop here. I think it's critical that we do those little things to improve the community, including golf carts that we've talked about before, making this, some of the roads golf cart accessible, which would be a wonderful idea. as well as the landscaping, the dredging. All those are really significant things. And we have got to increase the revenue available in order to move forward. You can't move forward having a decrease in the budget, in the budgetary expenditures, understanding that that was put together because of the projections. But we have got to focus on what are the critical priorities for us doing a better job where people want to live in this community, want to move in this community, want to do business in this community, want to visit our restaurants and spend money. That's the key to going forward, in my opinion. And there is never enough money for all the needs we have, but we certainly need to focus on the short run, I think, to some of those key things. We've got, roads that are in disrepair that need to be repaired, because that is an important infrastructure component that is important to people. I mean, look at what we did in the repaving in
Maria Palms?
yeah. It dramatically improved the look of that community. And the residents in that area noticed it, appreciated it. It became a more desirable place to live. So too it was the other areas. And we've continued to make some great strides in the derelict properties and trying to get, the mobile home as off of 19 to improve their issue. But we've got to find, whether it's grants, whatever it is, whether it's cooperation with the business community, the residents, whatever it takes, we've got to find ways to do things that are essential to improving the quality of life in this community.
You made the comment, and it seems to come back, that as was indicated in Tom's summary, when we look at those possible new sources of revenue that are contained within this, street lighting, user fees, waste hauler franchise fees, et cetera, it's hard to actually think what contribution that would make as far as an amount that would, be there. I don't know if we have any figures. Obviously, this is going to be something we're going to be talking about, putting together. At the same time, we've not talked about waterfront parks since we had, folks here that we actually had some designs. We had a lot of things that were occurring there. That's gone on the back burner. That piece just sits over there, and not much really occurs. I think it just seems like maybe it's a good dog walk area, and maybe folks having some picnics over there, and that's fine. But we've kind of gotten away from any talk there because there, quite frankly, is no funding. And yet at the same time, now look, I realize that these contribution of CRA dollars, I don't want to label it that, hey, we're spending this on employee portions, et cetera. That's necessary because a lot of that is CRA directed. And this was gone over back in 2009. But at the same time, it's been a number of years that we have not been able to identify any additional revenue sources. And look, we had brought back the communication tax, et cetera. Remember, at one time that was off as well.
Right.
That contribution was enormous. And I'm not saying that's a direction we need to look again, but there are ranges that are associated with some of those particular fees. And, are we where we need to be in those specific areas as well? I don't know.
Again, and I think this is problematic. We can't necessarily lapse into the cure being raising taxes because nobody wants to pay additional taxes, whether it's a fee or whether it's property taxes. It's always one of the hardest things to do as an elected official, to impose greater costs upon the residents. But certainly we need more revenue. And we probably need to be more creative in how we get the maximum benefit for our expenditures, including cooperating in doing dredging with community businesses, so that we can leverage the money. You know, if you look around, the places you want to visit or the places people want to live, you can start ticking them off as destination points. And why? Because they have something unique to attract you there. Because, you know, in some communities they have great schools. In other areas it's because they have great hospitals to support the population. There's something that attracts you. What we've got is a waterfront. We've got, you know, warm weather and a waterfront, but we haven't maximized our use of that. And I agree totally that, you know, we don't have big bucks to attract businesses, nor do we have open spaces that will attract big corporations. But we've got other destination reasons for people coming here. And if we don't continue to move forward in those development areas with expenditures that will be relatively minimal, then we have made a tragic mistake. And so I think we ought to direct the city manager in those areas where those items have been taken out of the budget. I think those are a priority.
I want to mention also that one of the very first, if not the first, programs I brought up when I came on council with Ellen, and I believe you spent some time on it too, Pam, was the solid waste franchise. And I think that's definitely a place where we can make some money and have actually a better service for our residents. Now that's a franchise, you know, basically where we put out to the solid waste companies, you get the exclusive to pick up trash in our city. And then we bill it, we get money out of it. Our residents, you know, they pay for it in their utility bills. It gets 3 out of 4 garbage trucks off the road because you got 4 companies running around our city right now tearing our streets up when you don't need it. And it's something I'd like to look into. I'd like to dig further into that. I think there is definitely a revenue source, an untapped revenue source there.
If I could add just a couple of comments. I think that it may help us to focus both on the short term and then the long term. Obviously, right now we are trying to complete our budget. What you have in front of you is only a draft budget, and subject to your comments, your revisions as you see appropriate. You know, as we mentioned, we're going to have some more fund carryover than we anticipated, because knowing that we were near the end of the line on our declining revenues in the CRA, we tried to be conservative with our forecast on behalf of the city. At the same time, I want to see us further our initiatives and our discussions that we've had with the business community. We've come a long way with regard to cooperative discussions on dredging of the commercial canals. We came to agreement on the sidewalk extension. The remainder of the work at this particular point in time is an expensive project that the city doesn't have all the resources to complete, but we are applying for external funding sources. Just to give you an idea on what we're dealing with in terms of the city's CRA revenue, it's about 1/2 of what it was 7 to 8 years ago. That is significant, and you had more options at that time. And so a lot of the general fund obligations were transferred to the CRA, and we're left with a situation where the CRA is helping the general fund, and we're at a point where there's not much left once you do that. And what I'm suggesting is, in the long term, that we look to identify those additional revenue sources garbage hauler or solid waste hauler fees are a part of it, perhaps. Perhaps user fees and street lighting. All of our surrounding areas do those, and the city of Port Richey's tried its best to keep its fees low. But the beauty of some of those fees is that everybody pays, even exempt properties. And so we can talk about that. In the short term, if you give me direction, I can come back to you with recommendations on funding allocations that we would set aside for the sidewalk improvements that were referenced, any other miscellaneous improvements that you see fit, money to participate in the dredging. I don't want to see those fail either. I don't want to see those cease. Those are important. Those are critically important to show the private sector, the commercial investors that we have that have put forth a lot of their money, that we're as interested in the development as they are. And so
Again, this is a reminder for why we are a city, and that is because we provide additional services to our residents that they don't get elsewhere. And some of those critical services that make us important to our residents is police, fire, trash pickup, the yard debris. That is very important to people in this community, okay? So and the improvement of just the simple things like making sure the water quality is as good as we can make it, and improving our streets and sidewalks. Those are basics for why you live in a place. So to impose additional fees on things like the yard debris pickup, I think you're going to get a lot of kickback. People are not going to be happy with that kind of thing. So, again, go back to what I talked about before. Let's impose parking fees for people who use the launch. And, we have, it's for another time, but there was an interesting discussion and poll on NBC News this past week over the honor system for paying for things, whether it's produce or flowers or whatever. And what did they find? 95% honesty. 95% of the people did what they were supposed to do. Yeah, you're going to have people that take advantage of it, people who rob the donation for charitable organizations, that steal the money for whatever. But that's the exception. And, some of the revenue sources I think we ought to direct our attention to is that impact, in the case of the boat launch, impact people primarily outside the city. That is not an additional burden, but is a user fee for those people who are actually using the services. What kind of revenue will generate? Maybe not great sums, but it's a step in the right direction. And every dollar additionally that we're able to generate, we can pour back into, like the waterfront district or whatever, for the maintenance, for the improvement. And I think, appearance becomes very important. Just how the city looks is very important for its attractiveness.
I just have a quick point. Just a couple things. One, I just want to go back real quick. As far as, we had talked about the playground and whatnot. I just want you all to know that there's some things going on behind the scenes. We're tiptoeing right now, trying to see what kind of interest and whatnot. We have a ways to go because there's a lot of information you have to know ahead of time before you start putting a letter out to find out who's interested. But something has been on my mind for a long time, and I would love to see this happen, and you guys might be able to help with your group, is, first of all, I want to make a point. Pasco County has produced 2 speakers of the House and possibly a 3rd one, okay? That's huge. The governor of this fine state of Florida has a big desire to keep nature. He, in my opinion, wants to keep our waterways clean and do things like that. So in other states, like Yellowstone Park, for instance, you have these wonderful hotels that are put into the park system. They're park system hotels. why could we not have in our Boyce Warner Park or Warner Boyce Park, couldn't we have approached the state of Florida and say, look, you know, this would be good for Pasco County to bring one of these wonderful parks in. So A, we have a destination. It may not be exactly in the city of Port Richey, but boy, does it butt up to us. Oh yeah. So now you have all kinds of people visiting the park that want to do outdoors things. So now they come and they can come and they can do kayaking and they can come visit the restaurants and so on and so forth. I just think that would just be, you know, there's really, like you said, why do people want to go to different places? Like you want to go to Dunedin because Dunedin has a beautiful area to look at the water and to have fine dining. You want to go up to Steenhatchee because they've got all this water activity to be able to do scalloping and so on and so forth. But we can have all those things out there, but there's really nowhere for anybody to go. If I want to go to Crystal River, I want to stay at the Plantation Inn, for instance, because it's, or all those little hotels that are on the waters because I want to be involved in the water things. So if we could, I mean, it's a long shot, but if we could get the state of Florida to put a hotel into this park, and this would possibly change Port Richey and change Pasco County in some way.
It's probably not possible because of swift water.
Not the normal protocol, but come on,
Well, we
Walter.
have TPs, and you can buy one for relatively pretty cheap, and people love it.
So, I mean, I think, you know, over the past year, we've made a lot of strides down the waterfront area. But there are other investors that are looking at like Botelia type of concept, you know, other, you know, platform tent concepts with inside the park system that, you know, I've been within venture tourism for 25 plus years. You know, treehouse concept. So there's investors that want to come in, but you know, when they come into the area and they say, what's that? Well, you don't have your sidewalks connected. You know, it has a statement that says, you know, okay, you know, am I going to spend, you know, my $1 million here or my whatever investment is when in a community that can't find a way to finish sidewalks or do proper lighting? You know, we're not talking about, when you're talking about lighting where people can walk through their communities from establishment to establishment. I mean, look at the boardwalk. I mean, and Mr. O'Neill and myself have talked about this, but the boardwalk. I mean, we have a lot of the natural assets that many communities around us are saying, please give them to us. You know, we can connect these. We can finish off boardwalks. You know, we can build, you know, lights. We can do these things, and we'll because we know, like I said, the return on those dollars is enormous. You know, if people could walk safely from communities, you know, down, you know, we're on the west side, but walk from community down from Bay or wherever they're coming from, but go all the way to the commercial district, sit down and have a dinner and enjoy themselves, and then, you know, get back in and either get in the golf cart. You know, we have those opportunities in front of us. And you have investors, I know, I talk to them daily, that want to invest, but we have to create that environment. And it's not like saying, oh, here's the floodgates to come in here and dump money. But it's simple things, like I said, finish off. I mean, like, let's go and build a sidewalk. I mean, Eric, to Eric's point, I mean, it's like, let's go and build a sidewalk. You know, let's go and put a light up. You know, a lot of times, like the beach volleyball net that we put in there. He said, you know, this week, guess what, Walter? Your job is put in the beach volleyball net. Have it done by Friday. That's getting it done. And we have that in front of us. It's not big dollars. It's just rolling up our sleeves. You know, yes, there is a little bit of investment, but we'll maximize the dollars. I promise you guys. Yeah. I mean, everyone around us have noticed what we have. The county notices it. They've designated this area. I mean, a lot of the surrounding community have noticed what we have. And then, you know, we're just asking, let's put a plan together and let's execute, get her done.
I don't think we disagree with that. Tom, with regard to the construction on 19, I know we're waiting until that's completed to do the re-landscaping of some of those areas.
Yes.
And we've got kind of commitments or funds in place for that?
Yes, we received a DOT grant to do that. And if you may recall, but they ask us to cease our activities on that until they finish with the project.
Correct.
So, we're gonna be able to do that and make it
Yeah.
look very good.
And I think that will, once they finish that, we have the opportunity to enhance the look of the entire area.
Yes,
And-
most
and
definitely.
just hopefully we do plantings that, like the crepe myrtle or whatever, that are extremely attractive and,
You can see out there what's survived
yeah,
with absolutely no maintenance.
yeah,
That is
And
some
the
peanut
crepe
grass.
myrtles are there, and actually, they look extremely good.
yeah,
And
exactly.
so, that's something I think maybe I can help with a little
Yeah,
bit personally.
exactly,
And
exactly. Because a lot of the plantings we did before required intensive watering and died anyhow.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Peanut grass and crepe myrtles.
Well, to give you a timetables, we essentially, this is the first bite at this apple. And I wanted to give you a timetable of what we're looking at here. We will hold our first public hearing on the budget on Thursday, September 11 at 7 o'clock.
Oh, that's a good day.
And our second public hearing on Thursday, September 25. Those are critical dates that are set because we cannot hold a hearing at the same date as the Pasco County Board of County Commissioners or the County School Board. So those are scheduled. You have until the second public hearing to make any changes that you would like. If it meets with a consensus approval of the council, I'll bring back some recommendations on taking what we think we're going to have with a fund carryover and applying it to some of the areas where we had eliminated the funding on because of budgetary concerns. So I can do that, and I don't have to wait for the public hearing. I can do that at the next council meeting
Okay.
or the one thereafter.
Okay, anything else from anybody?
What time are we doing these public hearings?
7 o'clock on Thursday, September 11 is the first public hearing on the budget. 7 o'clock on Thursday, September 25 is the second public hearing. And then you adopt the budget and it's final at that point.
I think it would help me if I had a definite idea whatever we're gonna be able to bring over into CRA.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear everything.
It would help me if, along with what you're doing, we had some idea of what rollover we're gonna be able to bring into the CRA.
Yes, we've tried to estimate that, and in fact, Pam and I were talking today. We think we're going to have at least $150,000. It may exceed that. However, please keep in mind that if we use everything that's there, that's the end of the line. And next year, you're going to have a situation where you'll either be looking at reduction in services, new user fees, or a tax increase. So, we think we're going to have at least $150,000 that you can say, I want to apply toward the sidewalk, I want to apply toward the other issues, the dredging, that, we've had some discussions. Right now, I've given Mr. Soyanen an easement document that he's completing. We're working together on that. His legal counsel is taking a look at a funding agreement where we could have a private-public sector partnership on funding that dredging of the commercial area right there. And so that's underway. But we think 150, if it changes, I'll let you know.
All right, and part of my frustration is that we have talked about these things over and over again, and we don't move forward. They always get back on the back burner, and I just think we've got to select out some things we're going to do and push in a concerted way to get them done, whether it's dredging or solid waste or whatever it is. Let's not wait a year to talk about it again for the next budget year. Okay, or the playground at the park. know, if,
why
if,
not?
it- if it's a project that we think bears going forward, let's do it.
I'm definitely gonna go forward with it as long as I have enough input, from, enough community help. I mean, and
Mhm.
it's gonna take some dollars and some help. I just wanted to real quick tell you all that, I have an annual training that takes me to Texas once a year, and that will be September 9th. And that happens to be a council meeting, so unfortunately I'll be out of the area on
Okay.
that date.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
Before we close, I just wanted to point out, I believe our next council meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday,
Yes.
Okay.
on the 27th instead
Okay.
of Tuesday.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, thank you for coming. All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you.